You know, you really got to hand it to a guy like Scott Cawthorne. Here's someone who struck a chord with gamers around the world with the first Five Nights at Freddy's, and then ever since that he's managed to milk it for every cent it's worth. Now I'll be honest, the first game scared the shit out of me because I'd never really seen or played anything like it before. Those animatronics were horrifying to behold, and I'm not ashamed to admit that they gave me a few sleepless nights. I even had a bit of fun with the second game as well, even though it really was more of the same. But by the time I got to the third game, a title that was pushed months ahead for no good reason, my patience had run pretty thin. And now we're up to the fourth and so-called final game in the series, and my patience is all but gone. In other words, I ain't got time for this shit. Yet again, pushed months ahead of its supposed release date, gotta get paid, son. Five Nights at Freddy's 4 is another jump scare simulator that regurgitates the same tired old formula and slaps yet another $7 or $8 price tag on top of it. For the first time in this series, we're taken out of a security control room and into a child's bedroom because I guess Scott thought the kids playing the previous games needed more of a location they could relate to when describing their nightmares to a therapist. The kid that you play as in this game has a big involvement with the events from the prior games, though more than that I'm not going to divulge. Again, you're dealing with 4 vantage points, a door to the left and right of you which leads to a dark hallway, a closet in front of you which leads to a dark closet, and a bed behind you which leads to a dark bed. Again, your weapon is a flashlight which scares all the robots away. The security camera feed is gone, but instead of those short moments of tension when you would pull up or put down the camera feed, now it's a second or two of your characters staring at the floor as they run to whichever vantage point you've clicked on. Because I know that I always stare at the floor when I run, as opposed to looking ahead of me like a normal person does. Anyway, as before, you can be attacked from any one of these vantage points, so you need to constantly switch back and forth between them to make sure something isn't trying to get into the bedroom. You can shut the door to the hallways if you hear breathing, and you have to flash your torch on the bed to stop these little miniature Freddy robots from sneaking up behind you. Foxy the pirate runs around like he's hopped up on energy drinks. No, seriously, he never sits still. And if he gets into your room, he runs straight into the closet. If he gets into the closet, you've got to frequently check on him and shut the closet door over and over, which seems to transform him back into a toy. Because, who knows, and this can also make it much more difficult to monitor both doors and also the bed behind you. To the game's credit, it does use these audio cues pretty well, and it kind of forces you to have your volume up so you can hear the breathing sounds or the footsteps on either side of the bedroom. It's a bit annoying how you have to keep your sound up full to hear these cues, only to have your eardrums blown off by those obnoxious jump scares. On a positive side, the controls are much more cohesive. I never once found myself fumbling to get something done, as I did in some of the other games. But still, it only really takes all of 5 minutes before you fall into that old familiar feeling as you just find yourself going back and forth as the night drags on. Check the door, check the bed, open the door, get on the floor, everybody do the dinosaur. It wouldn't be as bad either if the game didn't frequently break its own rules. Now, like the last game, there's no real tutorial or explanation of the game's mechanics outside of what buttons you press to do each action. And I just ended up kinda guessing my way through each of the nights, hoping I would get lucky and not be swamped by the robots. It's still very much the same game it's been since the first iteration of the series with little changes or improvements. Also on that note, why are we 4 games in and there's still no pause or options menu? Why is the game still not running at a high definition resolution, and why does the escape button still quit the program and not just return me to the main menu? About the only new addition is a minigame in between each night where you can skip 2 hours by catching Springtrap with your torch, but I haven't been able to do this properly a single time. You know, whilst playing this game, I came to the realization that it's no longer a game aimed at my demographic. It's really not. I guess I realized this when I was on the train the other day and heard a bunch of kids talking about how awesome they thought the latest Five Nights at Freddy's game was. God damn, that makes me feel old. I don't think I need to recommend or not recommend this game because, 4 games in, I think most people have made their minds up already. Personally, I'm sick of this shit and I can barely bring myself to finish it. The novelty of being killed repeatedly by a randomized series of encounters lost its appeal to me about 3 games ago. It's a shame that negative reviews of this game aren't really taken seriously because people assume you're just bad at the game or you're just trolling. Now look, I finished the game, I understand the game, and I know how the mechanics work. I just have issue with 4 games in a row that repeat the same old shit of forcing you to do nothing but those few mechanics over and over. I think it's time for Freddy to hang his rusty old animatronic suit up and retire, but I know that won't be the case. I know we'll be back here again in a few months, and I'll be saying the same old thing.